Hello guys, welcome to LawPutra YouTube channel, and our today's topic is Morley-Minto Reforms 1909, or you can say the Indian Councils Act 1909. The Indian Councils Act 1909 was an act of the British Parliament that introduced a few reforms in the Legislative Council and increased the involvement of Indians in the governments of British India. It was more commonly called the Morley-Minto reforms, and after the Secretary of the State for India, John Morley, and Viceroy of India, the fourth Earl of Minto. So let's talk about the background of Morley-Minto reforms. Despite Queen Victoria's proclamation that India would be treated equally, very few Indians got such an opportunity, as the British authorities were hesitant to accept the equal partners. The Lord Curzon, who had carried out the partition of Bengal in 1905, which led to a massive uprising in Bengal as a result. Following this, the British authorities understood the need for some reforms in the government of Indians. The INC, that is the Indian National Congress, was also agitating for more reforms in the governments of Indians, and the earlier Congress leaders were moderates, but now extremist leaders were on the rise who believe in more aggressive methods. The INC demanded home rules for the first time in 1906. The person Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he met Morley in England to emphasize the need for reforms. Then, the Shimla deputation. To understand it, it was a group of elite Muslims which was led by Aga Khan, who met Lord Minto in 1906 and placed their demands for a separate electorate for Muslims. John Morley was a member of the Liberal government, as we all know, and he wanted to make positive changes in India's government. So, what positive changes he want to make, and what were the major provisions of the Morley-Minto reforms? Let's talk about it. The first major provision was the Legislative Council at the center and the provinces increased in size. Point number one, that is Central Legislative Council. So the size was increased. Proposed that size should be increased from 16 to 60 members. In Legislative Council of Bengal, Madras, Bombay, and United Provinces, that it was 50 members each, and for Legislative Council of Punjab, Burma, and Assam, it was proposed 30 members each. Point number two, that the Legislative Council at the center and the provinces were to have four categories of the members as follows. Firstly, the ex officio members. So who are the ex officio members? They were the Governor General and the members of the Executive Council. Secondly, the nominated official members. Nominated official members were the people were the government officials who were nominated by the Governor General. And the thirdly, the nominated non-official members. They were the nominated by the Governor General but not government officials. And fourthly, the elected members. These were the people who were elected by different categories of Indians. The next point of the major reforms is the elected members were elected indirectly. The local bodies elected as elected college who would elect members of the provisional legislative council, and these members would in turn elect the members of the central legislative council. The fifth point, the elected members were from local bodies, the chambers of commerce, landlords, universities, traders, communities, and Muslims. Next point, that in the provisional councils, non-official members were in the majority, and however, since some of the non-official members were nominated, in total a non-elected majority was there, and Indians were given the membership to the Imperial Legislative Council for the first time. Next point, that it introduced separate electorates for the Muslim, and some constitute were unmarked for the Muslims, and only for Muslims could vote for their representatives. And also, it is important to note that the members could discuss the budget and move resolutions. They could also discuss the matters of public interest. Next point, that they could also ask supplementary questions, and no discussions on foreign policy or any relations with the princely states were permitted. So the Lord Minto appointed Satyagraha P. Sinha as the first Indian member of the Viceroy's Executive Council. So who was the first member of Viceroy Executive Council? He was Satyendra P. Sinha, appointed by Lord Minto. Two Indians were also nominated to the Council of the Secretary of States for Indian Affairs. So let's assess this Monte-Midlo reforms. So the assessment of Monte-Midlo reforms is, first, the act introduced communal representation in Indian politics, and this was intended to stem the growth tides of nationalism in the country by dividing the people into communal lines. The culmination of this step was seen in the partition of the country along with the religious lines, and the effect of different treatment of different religion groups can be seen this way. Also, next point is that the act did nothing to grant colonial self-government, which was Congress demand, and the act did increase the Indian participation in the legislative councils, especially at the provincial levels. So the question is, what are the Morley-Minto reforms of 1909 known for? So the answer is Indian Council Act of 1909 is also known as Morley-Minto reforms, and it was instituted to palliate the moderates, that was the Congress, and introduced separate electorates on the basis of religion. Therefore, Lord Minto came to known as the father of communal electorate in India. Thank you and have a nice day.